You need to learn how to say no way more. A lot of us think that the game plan or the cheat code is saying yes to every single opportunity that's out there, but you don't actually realize that the more that you actually spend time on those opportunities and chasing things that don't have anything to do with your long-term vision, what ends up happening is that you end up wasting time. Some of us need to start saying no to some of our vices. I was listening to a podcast literally this morning in my gym session, right? And the guy, I won't mention who it was, right? But he was basically saying how, for example, a lot of people don't actually realize the power of strength. He was talking in regards to obviously being in the gym and obviously building muscle, being able to lift a heavy weight and how it correlates into other things. And how he personally wouldn't necessarily trust someone that can't necessarily lift a heavy weight and has a disciplined lifestyle to become, part of his circle, because obviously he's going to lead to a lot of things. And part of those things is them not being, for example, trustworthy, them not being someone that you can rely on in hard times, them only wanting the instant gratification and actually not being there through the grind and through, the tough times, the ups and the downs, etc. And what it actually made me think is that in reality, outside of other people, a lot of us in ourselves, even me speaking at this current point, we reflect that. Yes, you may be good at one thing, for example, but it doesn't go over to other places within your lifestyle. You may be in the gym, for example, but then how disciplined are you outside the gym? Are you disciplining yourself in terms of calories, etc.? You may be very talented in terms of production, for example, but are you making a beat every single day and outside of that, networking to a point that people are now going to actually be like, you know what, this guy makes sense, and putting content out there, for example. I know too many producers right now that are the most talented in the world, but no one knows them. Whereas there's other producers that actually can't make the best beats, but guess what? They're putting themselves out there and they're doing their thing. And as a result, they're becoming successful. It applies to absolutely everything. And the reason why we don't necessarily follow through with our ambitions and goals, a part of it is obviously the things I've said in prior, morning updates and journals and things like that, where it's like the self-confidence isn't there, where we feel afraid to dedicate and show our talent, where we feel a type of way when we see other people basically looking into whatever we're talking about or have to actually put on the internet. Because it is kind of embarrassing, especially when you start. But even past that, what I believe it actually is that we're not willing to take away all the fluff and all the things that we feel as if those making us productive, I love listening to podcasts, but times in the day where I should be working, why am I on YouTube listening to a podcast? Do you know what I mean? If you're a producer, there's times where you're supposed to be making a beat and then you're over there literally just scrolling through, searching for like samples and things like that. And some people might be like, oh, isn't that what you're supposed to do? What happens, or what if you were a tiny bit better prepared and instead of scrolling through samples, you had a dedicated time to find the samples and then eventually throw it in, etc. Is a mechanism that I developed when it came to engineering, for example. I thought to myself, in every single session, I can't sit down and build a whole chain for this. Is either I come up with quick templates for me to basically drag the beat in, drag the vocal head, do this and do that, or I need to get way faster at building chains for artists in order for them to record and actually build momentum, etc. And that only comes from saying no to the things which is in the short term might seem difficult, but in reality, in long term, when you say no to them, it's actually going to benefit you, right? A lot of us feel as if though there's a secret cheat code or there is something outside of us that's actually going to get us to our dedicated goal. When in reality, everything's actually already within. You have all it takes right now to literally change your life. I said it. There are people that literally post 3 to 5 times a day on TikTok. There's other people that be posting 100 times. I watched a podcast yesterday again, back to the podcast, right? And one guy, I forgot his name, but he's making minimum like 500 G's per month from his product, right? And he talked about when he first started, he was at a point where he was so broke, he had nothing to his name, and he was literally so tired that he just started posting 100 times a day on TikTok. Now, when people look at me, right, posting maybe 3 times a day, when I'm really, really trying to amp it, like when my posts were really going, I think I was doing like up to 20 a day, bro, just posting different clips, spending time and just dedicating, chopping it up, doing this and doing that, right? And when you're in that type of bag, right, where you feel like what I'm doing makes sense, when in reality, I'm still only on like 1K followers, or my YouTube was still growing, etc. Then you start looking at guys that are out here posting 100 times a day, bro. There's levels, bro. There's levels to this. Do you know what I mean? And he got to that point because he said no to failure. He said no to his circumstance at that point and thought to himself, you know what? I can't be in this forever. I need to actually make sure I'm getting out of my circumstance. I'm getting out of my situation. As a result, he's now a multi-millionaire. A lot of us need to start saying no to more distractions. This is one thing I used to do with my mentees, right? When I was in like things like property and other things that I've helped people basically do. By the way, like for those that are new to this channel, I'm a music producer that has experience within property, marketing, sales, all sorts of things, right? So the more you tune into these videos, you start to realize that I'm a random person, but I've had a bit of success here and there and also some massive failure. So it's a balance view, I guess. In saying that, right, I would get them to do this task. I'll get them to look at, for example, their screen time. I don't think you guys can see it because I've blurred things out. Let's see. I'll get them to, no, you guys can't see it. I'll get them to look at their screen time and tell me right there and then, like, how much time are you spending on some of these apps? For me, for example, my biggest vice is, let's say, for example, last week is number one YouTube. Like I said, I almost spent an entire day on YouTube last week. Ridiculous. Snapchat, TikTok, then everything else is just there. Do you know what I mean? So in reality, when I'm now looking at it and breaking it down, let's say, for example, with this week, again, there's the same top 3 apps. So what I need to then do is that if I want to dedicate more time to, for example, doing content, and this is what I do. If I want to dedicate more time to, for example, being in the gym, I've been waking up earlier, I'm making sure that I block all these apps out besides YouTube. Now, YouTube is a tricky one because obviously I'm building a platform on here, and outside that, I do be listening to more motivation or learning and da-da-da-da, but there needs to be set times in the day and discipline enough to actually stick to the set times. Do you know what I mean? But when it comes to things like Snapchat, TikTok, for example, let's be real, like, it's brain rot, bro. You know what I mean? Bare distractions, bare things going on. And the more that you actually indulge in watching other people get success and watching other people basically build their lives while you are literally just a consumer feeding that information in, the more you actually realize that, bro, like, what am I actually doing in my life? Do you know what I mean? That's when I made a dedicated decision to become more so a producer outside of music production, right? But more so a producer of content and valuable content at that instead of a consumer, right? Only time I'm consuming is to literally just learn, okay, cool, this is how people are building a reaction channel. Or this is something that I can learn from my business. Or this is something that I can basically use in maybe a conversation or a sales call or something like that. Do you know what I mean? The things you're consuming for majority, right, or for the most part, need to be things that are going to edify either your mind, body, soul, or finances. If it doesn't, then why are you watching it? Makes no sense. A lot of us are watching negative things and then wonder why our life is completely negative. A lot of the man, for example, you watch red pill content, for example. I have nothing against the initial part of red pill. I'm going to be very, very honest. But a lot of you watch toxic red pill and then you start wondering, okay, why is that? I'm starting to develop a hatred or a disdain. I think it's not a hatred, it's a disdain, right? For ladies. Why am I feeling so bad about myself? Why am I feeling incompetent? I feel like I can't live the type of life I want until I become a multi-millionaire. When in reality, that's not life. Yes, I always recommend to the man them self-improve and do everything in your power to make sure you're living life on your terms. But at the end of the day, not every single person is going to make it in the early 20s. I'll give you an example. Someone like, for example, Andrew Tate, since we're talking red pill, he made his first million, if I'm not mistaken, around like 27, 28, if not 29, towards his 30s. Majority of people don't hit a million on average, right? On average, until I believe it's even 40. You get it? So if you see anyone that's below 40 that's a millionaire, bro, it's atypical. You feel me? Now, even with 6 figures, bro, this is like the top 1% of every, in fact, in the entire world. So when you go on social media and you're thinking, okay, yeah, I need to hit 6 figures and this and that, don't get it twisted. Man's trying to hit that and even past it, but you can't put pressure on yourself when you haven't hit it yet because you haven't become the type of person you need to be in order to actually achieve that. In the process, allow the process to unfold. Allow yourself to become better. Instead of beating yourself up and saying, why aren't I at the point that I need to be? Instead of, you know, pouring more energy in terms of actually walking the journey and actually walking the mile, actually doing everything in your power to actually get to that point. A lot of us are really, really fumbling the bag right now, bro. And when I say fumbling the bag, I'm not talking in terms of, you know, opportunities or anything like that. I'm saying like we're disappointing ourselves by saying yes to the wrong things, bro. You know what I mean? Again, I have majority man them watching this type of content, so I'm just going to cater for you guys for now. A lot of us are spending time on ladies, bro. And don't get it twisted, like, obviously you have to go on dates and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not one of the man them that would be like, bro, you have to grind 1,010%. And just ignore ladies, etc. Obviously, have a balance in it, do your thing, right? But if it gets to a point where you're realizing, okay, cool, now I'm actually more focused on chasing the cat rather than chasing, obviously, bread and my purpose and getting better, then there is a problem. Same thing applies to, for example, drinking and smoking. Me personally, I'm sober, so I can't necessarily relate, right? But with drinking, for example, I always say to the man, I'm like, broski, you guys need to really, really be careful with this thing, because once you drink, you become entirely different people. And as a result, you end up making very, very silly decisions. And as a result, you end up regretting it the next day. It's not worth it to me personally. Drink in moderation, you know? For people that, for example, are of faith, right? It doesn't condemn, for example, drinking it. It condemns getting drunk. You feel me, right? But me personally, I'll just not go into it, because obviously when you actually look into things like what alcohol means, alcohol, etc., it gets a bit deep in it, but I don't want to take you guys there. When it comes to, for example, smoking, for example, yeah? I'm a producer. I'm around people that smoke all the time, yeah? But at the same time, I'm the honest person. I'm just like, broski, like, you, man, don't let this thing take control of you. Because if you do, then broski, you're cooked. You're cooked. I have conversations with people every single day that they even say, bro, like, don't even start, because they're at a point where maybe they can't eat without smoking. Maybe they can't have fun without, do you know what I mean? It's like, bro, you don't want to put yourself in these compromising positions. And the compromising positions literally come when you keep on saying yes for a long period of time, where it's harder to say no than ever before. So it's all about redirecting your energy, redirecting your focus onto the things that actually truly matter. And what truly matters for me? This is something that I recommend every single person do. Get a piece of paper. I wish I had one right here. Yeah, get a piece of paper and list every single thing that's important from you, like maybe 10 to 15, if not 20, right? In fact, go for 20. Go for 20. List it. Everything that's important to you in order of importance. By the time you get to maybe 7 to around 10, you start to realize that, oh, not a lot of things are actually very important. For example, when I did this exercise, right, I think I started off with like God, then purpose, then straight after that it was music, then straight after that was obviously like my business, and straight after that was like gym and my health, etc. Then straight after that it was then family, then straight after that, like, I just kept on going on, going on. Then I realized by the time I got to like 7, I was like, oh damn, not a lot of things actually I care about. And it's not, I feel as if there were around a lot of people that will shame you for just being honest and saying that, bro, you actually don't care about a lot of stuff. Do you know what I mean? If you don't care about political issues going on right now, people be like, you don't care? Oh, political issues. But no, I don't care. Don't. Sorry. When people are like, oh, well, you don't care about the social issues going on between, like, for example, men and women. If it's not to do with content or me, like, for example, advising a man them, or us having conversation in regards to like, okay, cool, like, eventually we're trying to go for wives, you know, then outside of that, I don't really care, because it's all BS. It's all fabricated, bro. There was even this is my next video. It's probably going to come out today. I was on YouTube doing some research for like content I need to do. And there was a guy, I think it was Poetic Flacco, if I'm not mistaken, right? He made a video which was so powerful. He was talking about how a lot of the hate accounts are on like Twitter, for example. And anything that happens on Twitter is the same thing. It's going to transpire over to TikTok and IG and things like that. A lot of the hate accounts on like black people, especially like black men, is coming from India, bro. Like people in India that are just literally clip farming and literally trying to rage bait black community, especially in America. But as we already know, like, I feel like the Americans don't realize that anything that goes on in America goes over to Europe, then eventually it goes into Africa, etc. When I first went over to Nigeria, obviously I was a younger man in it, but I was still aware, do you know what I'm saying? When I went over to Nigeria and I was around like 14, for example, I was clued up, you know what I mean? Because I've always been around older people. I know what I grind. A lot of people say I'm more advanced for my age. Back then, let's say, for example, since we're on the topic of men and ladies, right? Men weren't how they are right now. Ladies were not how they are right now, where everything's about billing and for my Nigerian people, you know what that is, you know what I'm saying? But all of a sudden, within the space of 5 to 10 years, things have transformed on its head. Same thing over here in the UK. Transformed on its head. You know what I mean? And you now start to ask yourself, okay, why is this actually the case? Then when you look into it, and I know it's a bit deep, you start to realize, okay, it's coming from agendas. And when I say agendas, it's not like Illuminati confirming that, but it's like agendas that are being pushed to promote certain marketing messages because they understand that there is a direct financial gain from doing so. Do you know what I mean? When they're pushing artists like Sexy Red out, for example, if you look behind who's actually behind Sexy Red, etc., and where the money's actually coming from that funded her meteoric rise, and is the exact same thing with any other artist that pushes certain type of messages, you start to realize, oh, okay, interesting. Do you know what I mean? So, not to get too deep on you guys, right? But it really makes you think that all this stuff that we're invested in and all this stuff that's taking our and robbing our energy, right? Because energy is emotion is energy in motion. So anything that you invest your energy in, you start to take motion towards, right? The more that we invest our energy into all these things that are making us feel angry, sad, depressed, anxious, etc., we're heading in that direction, bro. You feel me? The more on the opposite side that we start to feed our focus, right? And look at things that are going to make us grow, get in the gym, eat healthy, for example. All these different things that are going to actually get us towards it. And do you know what's so crazy? Yeah. When you're doing one positive thing, that can outweigh like 5 negative things, for example. I'll give you an example, right? Get in the gym. I've said that so many. I feel like in a love of life, yeah, I probably would have been like a gym instructor, but I need to pattern my diet first, though. But when you're in the gym, right, this one positive habit that you have or activity that you do on a regular basis, it starts to impact so many other things within your life. All of a sudden, your mind gets stronger. All of a sudden, your body gets stronger, of course. All of a sudden, you start to care about what you're eating and what you're putting in because you know in the next day, if you don't fuel yourself correctly, then bro, you're going to feel mad. You know what I mean? It starts to work in your soul as well because that point, that like sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I'll be listening to music and getting hype in the gym, but some other times, especially in the early morning sessions, bro, man, be like listening to some stoicism, listening to some motivation. You know what I mean? Some motivation, I can't lie, is to piss me off on purpose so I can like do my thing, or it's to like just be like, okay, cool, like you actually can, you know what I mean? Pouring into myself to make sure I'm ready for the day. Yeah. Now, that one positive thing has become so many positive things. Whereas 5 negative things in reality is just it doesn't equate, you know what I mean? Hopefully the point lands. So we need to start saying no, man. Saying no, saying no, saying no. And funny enough, with the positive thing, back to the point again, right? Probably my last point. When you are more on a positive route, people think it's actually harder than it actually is. It's actually quite simple when you deep it. But maybe it is hard because if not, everyone would be doing it, right? But what I found is that when you're on a positive lane and you're trying to improve yourself, right? The more you subtract from yourself and the more you subtract from like all the distractions and vice and this and that, it actually like is way easier to achieve. So for example, let's say again, if you want to become the best version of yourself, probably 5 things you need to do. Strengthen your relationship with God, get your finances correct, have something that fulfills you in terms of like passion, for example, have like a healthy, you could say, relationship circle that includes obviously your missus as well. And outside of that, also get your health on point. Like if you focus on, for example, those 5, there's other things as well, of course. If you focus on those 5, guess what? It's going to transpire into like becoming 25 things. In saying that, you're also saying no to all the negative things in behind as well. Do you get it? So start to learn how to say no, man. Like, get comfortable saying no, because that's the only cheat code. My people, them, if you enjoy these type of mindset downloads, make sure to leave a like. It boosts up in the algorithm. Outside of that, also share with a friend that you feel like needs to hear. These ones don't do as many views, and I will always understand that. But I'm doing it for the fact that I've challenged myself to be posting regularly, especially the morning uploads. And outside of that, yeah, man, we're building a community with like-minded people that are actually here because of myself and the message that I actually have to push, despite obviously the controversial stuff that goes out as well. You know? But my people, them, have a lovely day, and I'll see you guys in the next one tomorrow.